Yes, it does. All right, now we're going to talk about the things that you say to yourself. Now, if you haven't downloaded, by the way, the Overcoming Procrastination Guide, the link is below. Make sure you get it. Go with it. Go through it with me. Okay? Now, we're on right here, identifying the things that you say to yourself. All right? So go to that page with me. Now, identifying the questions and statements you say to yourself will help you, all right, know and face the problem. Now, we talked a little bit about that at the end of the last video, but I want to talk right now about the I don't know syndrome, and it really is a syndrome. I don't know if you know anyone that always says to you, I don't know. Well, when would you like, I don't know. I don't know. What are you going to do about that? I don't know. I don't know. When somebody does that to me, I do know something. They have a problem. They have not just a procrastination problem. They actually have an identity problem. So one of the things, actually, let me just backtrack for a second, tell you about it. In the Blockit Planner, we've created a signature video series that deals with the skill set of planning, plus it deals with the mindset, touches on it. And one of the videos, it's a bonus video, and that is who are you? And I really hone in on identity. And one of the reasons for that is because we actually, very, very few people that I meet are very clear on who they are. And that's kind of interesting, isn't it? And because of that, they got all kinds of stuff going on up here. And so we want to kind of get out of here. We want to get clear. We don't want this life of I don't know to be looming, because ambiguity also leads to procrastination. And if you have a dream, a goal, you can't live in the unknown. So the I don't know syndrome opens the door to paralyzing fear. And that can be perceived as procrastination. So you can actually be afraid of solving something. That's not even a stretch. In fact, we're doing a case study in this guide, and we're going to talk about that. So you never thought that you would actually be afraid of a solution. But usually we have idealistic expectations, and the solution may shatter one of those expectations or have to reroute it. And a lot of times that right there is the reason that people live with this paralyzing fear, because the ideal is going to be shattered, or has the potential to be shattered if it's faced. I know that firsthand. I had an ideal situation in my life decades ago, a few decades, couple decades. And I thought this is how it was going to end up. So I just stayed the course, never wanting to really take note of the signals and the signs that said it ain't going to happen like that. And I was devastated at the end, but that is real stuff. And a lot of people deal with it. In fact, I don't know anybody that at some point in their life doesn't deal with this. Now, the good news is, though, that fear can only work when it's hidden, when it's under the surface. Once it's acknowledged, once it's out in the open, it actually dissipates, because fear cannot exist where light is. And so it just dissipates. So the better and the better, let me say the faster you acknowledge something, the better it is for you. All right, so we're addressing that in this planner, and you'll see how we do that. And then you don't know what you don't know. That sounds so silly, doesn't it? So how often, has anybody ever been to a psychologist? And we talked about this in our hour-long talk, and you tell the psychologist all this stuff, and then he comes back and he said, or she comes back and they say to you, so what do you think about that? And don't you just want to scream? You want to scream. You want to say, well, if I knew what to think about that, I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't have wasted all my breath. That's why coaches are awesome. I mean, Sarah and I are coaching, but we have coaches. We coach, but we also have coaches, and they are awesome because most good coaches don't come back to you and say, what do you think, right? They say, okay, let's act. Well, a real good coach will say, okay, let's deconstruct this and reconstruct it. And you get a coach that knows how to deconstruct and reconstruct, you have got someone who is going to propel you forward. Because if somebody says to you, well, what do you think about that? I tell you what, my mind goes like, oh God, I can't even, that's the stupidest question in the world. If I knew what to think about it, I wouldn't even be here. But if you can deconstruct what you think and then reconstruct what you should be thinking, wow, you have got something. Now, back to our discussion here. So you may say to the psychologist, let's just use him as an example or her as an example, and then you say, what do you think about your boss? They'll say to you, right? What do you think about your boss? And you might say, right, well, I'm afraid of my boss. Okay. I'm reading this. I'm reading like from our little thing here. So let's go back through that. For example, you may say, I'm afraid of my boss. And he'll say, well, what do you think of your boss? Why are you afraid of your boss? And most of the time, if you knew what you thought, how to solve the problem or overcome the fear, you wouldn't have been there in the first place. So if you knew why you were afraid of your boss, or if you knew what you really should be thinking about your boss, then you wouldn't be there in the first place. Okay, so we kind of just covered that extensively. But a lot of people are afraid of their bosses. A lot of people are afraid of authority. And one of the reasons for that is a lot of people feel that that person controls their future. And this is the first, that's the first paradigm that has to be dealt with. Nobody controls your future but you. There isn't a boss on earth that controls your future. There is always another job. And there is always another opportunity. And there is always another dream or vision. No human being controls your future. And I think that is really important to understand. So again, let me just recap that real quick. You have to identify, right, the things you say to yourself. And you have to identify the things that make you afraid. Now, negativity. Let's talk about negative answers. When a negative answer is given, all right, a lot of times people will cut off hearing, or they didn't receive the outcome they want, so they say, I knew it. Why did I even try? Well, because knowing is better than not knowing. Recently, I had a friend, she had called me and she was really sick. And I said, well, did you go get your COVID test? And she said, no, because I'm afraid. I'm afraid it might be positive. I said, well, God, go get it, because then you won't be afraid anymore. You'll know if it's positive or if it's negative. Well, she actually had something that was even going to keep her down a little bit longer than COVID. It was mono, but okay, she knew. And that way, she felt so much better. Text me immediately. She goes, "Oh my God, I don't have COVID." Okay, so this just holds true for life. It holds true in relationships. So often we don't communicate with each other because we always think we're going to get an expected outcome, and then the negative answer comes, and then we, block the effect of that, and then we fail to communicate how that makes us feel and what it just did. It just, blew the bubble out of the water. Guess what? The more you say what is really the issue, people will listen. You don't have to go on and on like, you're the victim, right? No, just say, hey, I really thought it was going to go like this. Boy, was I wrong. It didn't go like that at all. And now I got to regroup. All right. Hey, let's do it. Let's regroup. I'm still alive. Let's do it. Okay. So often we don't ask hard questions because we're afraid of rejection. Fear of rejection holds us captive. So asking removes ambiguity and always allows you to focus on what is true. So I share at the bottom of this, one of the episodes, one of my favorite episodes of the Gilmore Girls, where Rory wants this job at the Gazette, and she follows around the owner, and she thinks she's doing a great job, and he actually fires her. She's just like an intern, and he fires her. He says, he says to her, he says, you'll never be a good journalist. And she says, why? You ask for coffee, I always get it. You ask for this. He says, exactly. He said, but you never step out in your own initiative. And a good journalist has to step out. Well, his words crushed her so much she quit school. And she dropped out. And it took her almost a full year to get her act back together because the words, her expectations were shattered. Well, we all face this once or twice in our lives. All of us do. And with that said, knowing is always better than not knowing. That caused her to regroup and end up in a better place than she was to begin with. All right, on that note, I'll see you in the next video. We're going to talk about deconstructing the problem.